For thousands of years, the galaxy lived under the shadow of the Zarath Dominion. To most species, the Dominion was not just a government. It was a prison of stars, an iron fist that never loosened its grip. Their fleets filled the void. Their armies walked on every world they touched, and their cruelty carved scars that would never heal. The Dominion ruled through fear. They burned cities that resisted. They shattered planets that dared to speak of freedom. Entire civilizations were erased from history, remembered only as warnings to others. The message was always the same. The Dominion is eternal. And for ages, no one doubted them. Across the spiral arm, species lived in chains. Some wore them around their necks, working as slaves for the Dominion's factories. Some wore them in their minds, broken into obedience, forgetting that freedom had ever been real. The few who dared to dream of rebellion were hunted down and silenced, but hope, no matter how faint, has a way of surviving. In the dark corners of the galaxy, whispers traveled, whispers of a world untouched by Dominion fleets. A world so distant, so small, that the Dominion had never cared to take it. That world was called Earth. At first, the Dominion dismissed it. A single planet, a young species, barely stepping into the void. What could they matter? The galaxy was filled with thousands of worlds, many richer and stronger. Humans were nothing compared to the great empires that had already fallen. Yet strange reports reached Dominion ears. Scouts who wandered too close spoke of humans who did not break easily. Traders told stories of their strange courage, of their endless hunger to survive. It was said that when humans were pushed, they grew stronger, not weaker. The admirals of the Dominion laughed. Every race boasted of courage. Every world had called itself strong before kneeling in chains. Humanity would be no different, but not all were convinced. Among the enslaved species, there were those who listened closely. They clung to the stories of Earth as if to a fragile flame. They believed humanity was different, and that one day humans might rise where others had fallen. The Dominion ignored these whispers. Their fleets moved on, bringing destruction wherever resistance grew, until, in a quiet sector of space, something unexpected happened. A rebellion. It was not the first, but it was larger than most. Dozens of enslaved worlds united, desperate enough to fight back. They were poorly armed, badly organized, but driven by the fire of desperation. For a moment, they tasted hope. For a moment, they believed the Dominion could bleed. The Dominion responded with fury. Entire armadas were dispatched. Planet by planet, the rebellion was cornered. The rebels retreated to a lonely system, gathering their remaining ships for one last stand. They knew the end was near, yet still they stood. When the Dominion fleets arrived, the stars themselves seemed to darken. Thousands of warships filled the void. Their commanders prepared to crush the rebellion once and for all. Victory was certain. The Dominion always won. The rebels looked upon the endless enemy, and their hearts sank. They whispered prayers, not for themselves, but for their children, that somehow, somewhere, freedom might live again. And then, the impossible happened. The void rippled. Space itself seemed to tremble. From the darkness beyond the system's edge, a shape emerged. At first, it was a shadow against the stars. Then light caught its armor, and the rebels gasped. It was colossal. Larger than any vessel they had ever seen. Its hull was layered with steel, thick as mountains. Its engines burned with a brilliance like suns. Where Dominion ships looked sharp and cruel, this vessel looked unstoppable, a fortress born of determination. It was a Terran Battleship, the first Earth had ever sent beyond its home. The Dominion's admirals laughed no longer. For the first time in countless centuries, fear crept into their hearts. And in that moment, though no shot had yet been fired, the Dominion's dominion began to crack. The Dominion fleet was vast. Thousands of ships spread across the stars like a steel curtain. They had fought rebellions before, crushed uprisings, and silenced screams with fire. Yet when the Terran Battleship appeared, silence fell across the Dominion armada. For the first time, their commanders hesitated. The battleship moved with calm power. It did not rush. It did not falter. It drifted forward like a mountain carried by the tide, unshaken by the countless weapons now aimed at it. Its presence alone was a challenge, a declaration that humans had come. On the rebel ships, hope burst like fire. Broken crews who had prepared for death now shouted with disbelief. They did not know who these strangers were, but they felt strength radiating from the massive vessel. Some wept, others laughed, all unable to look away. The Dominion Admiral, Lord Serac, snarled in anger. Fear was poison and he would not allow it. His voice echoed across the fleet's comms. Destroy it. One ship cannot stand against the Dominion. His words unleashed the storm. Hundreds of Dominion cruisers opened fire. Beams of plasma, missiles, and energy lances streaked through the void, all converging on the Terran battleship. To the rebels, it looked as if a star itself was being torn apart. The darkness was filled with light, every weapon screaming in fury. But when the glow faded, the Terran vessel still moved. Its shields flared, its armor smoked, but it remained. Where any other ship would have been shattered, this one endured. Then, for the first time, the Terrans answered. A single broadside erupted from its hull. Bright lances of kinetic fire shot across the void, faster than light beams, heavier than mountains. Dominion cruisers were torn apart in an instant. Entire formations vanished in flashes of fire. What the Dominion had believed impossible became real. Their ships were dying. The rebels erupted in cheers. For centuries, the Dominion had been unchallenged. Now, before their eyes, one Terran ship was doing what no empire had dared, fighting back and winning. But the battle was far from over. Serac's fury grew. He commanded the full fleet to engage. Thousands of ships swarmed, trying to encircle the battleship. Fighters poured like swarms of insects. Missiles darkened the stars, and massive dreadnoughts charged forward. The Terran battleship did not retreat. Its guns spoke with thunder. Massive cannons unleashed storms of steel, tearing holes through the Dominion lines. Missile pods erupted from hidden bays, hunting targets with relentless precision. Energy beams carved through destroyers as if they were paper. Each strike was devastating, each blow calculated. Yet still the Dominion pressed. Numbers were their weapon, and they had more than any one ship could ever match. Slowly, piece by piece, the Terran battleship's shields weakened. Its armor burned. The rebels watched in terror, wondering if this miracle would fall before it truly began. Inside the Dominion command ship, Serac smiled coldly. "Let them taste despair," he hissed. "Even their strongest cannot stand before us." But Serac did not understand humans. The Terran battleship had not come alone. Far beyond the system's edge, engines roared to life. Hidden by the void, more shapes emerged. Smaller than the battleship, but still powerful, they came in formation. Frigates, cruisers, carriers, all Terran designs, built with purpose, built with fury. The rebels gasped as dozens, then hundreds, of Terran ships filled the darkness. The single battleship was not a lone warrior. It had been the herald, the first to announce humanity's arrival. Now the Terran fleet had come. The Dominion fleet wavered. Confidence drained as the truth struck them. This was not a small race to be ignored. This was a power rising, a fire. No chains could smother. For the first time in generations, the Dominion's grip trembled. The battle had only begun. Meet them with such strength. But now, before their eyes, the void was filled with Terran warships. The single battleship had been the beginning, and now the full force of humanity revealed itself. On the rebel ships, silence fell for a heartbeat. Then it broke into cries of disbelief and joy. To them, it was as if the universe itself had answered their prayers. The humans had come not as victims, but as warriors. The Terran fleet moved with discipline. Their formations were tight, their maneuvers precise, their weapons shining with deadly brilliance. Each vessel carried the same aura as the great battleship, unyielding, unstoppable, forged with the spirit of survival. For the rebels, who had lived their lives under chains, it was a vision they had never dared to dream of. For the Dominion, It was the beginning of fear. Admiral Serac refused to show weakness. His voice cracked across the comms, cold and furious. They are nothing but newcomers. Crush them. Show them what eternity means. His fleets obeyed. The void erupted once, more in violence. Dominion dreadnoughts advanced, spitting fire. Swarms of interceptors raced ahead, darting between Terran lines. Missiles streaked in thousands, painting trails of light across the stars. The Terrans answered in kind. From the battleship's command, Deck Captain Elena Markov stood firm, her eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding. She did not see fear in her crew. She saw resolve. Each man and woman on that bridge carried the weight of their species, and none would allow humanity's first step into the galaxy to be its last. Target their command ships, she ordered. Break their spine. Terran cannons thundered. Massive slugs of metal accelerated to unimaginable speeds, tore through Dominion flagships. Explosions bloomed like small suns as one after another, enemy command vessels disintegrated. The Dominion fleet shuddered. Their discipline wavered. For the first time in living memory, their ADM, eye rolls were falling in battle. The rebels watched with awe. Tears ran down their faces as they saw the unthinkable, the Dominion bleeding. Ships that once brought terror now died screaming in fire. Chains began to feel lighter, as if the weight of centuries had cracked. But the Dominion was not defeated yet. Their numbers were still overwhelming. For every cruiser destroyed, 10 more pressed forward. For every dreadnought shattered, waves of fighters surged. Slowly the Terran lines strained, shields flickered, armor burned. On board the battleship, alarms wailed, systems failed, corridors shook, but no voice spoke of retreat. Humanity had never turned from hardship, and they would not now. Markov clenched her fists. Hold the line. The galaxy is watching, and indeed it was. Across rebel ships, across enslaved colonies secretly linked to the battlefield, millions watched. They saw not just war, they saw hope given form. They saw humans, a people unknown, standing where none had stood before. Among the rebels, courage spread. Captains who had prepared to die in silence now rallied. Ships that had once planned only to survive now surged forward, fighting alongside. The Terrans. Fight, one rebel commander cried. Fight with them. Fight for freedom. The rebels joined the Terran fleet, their ragged ships becoming part of something greater. Side by side, they struck back at the Dominion. What had been? Despair turned into fury, into defiance, into fire. The Dominion commanders grew uneasy. Numbers had always been their weapon, but now numbers were slipping from their grasp. For every rebel ship that fell, 2 more rose with new courage. For every Terran warship struck, 3 Dominion vessels were torn apart. Admiral Serac's snarl became a grimace. For the first time, doubt coiled in his chest. These humans, he whispered. They fight as if they cannot imagine defeat. And he was right. The humans did not come to bow. They came to break chains. The battle raged on, but the tide had shifted. A flame of defiance, once small and fragile, now spread across the galaxy, and it had only just begun. The battle spread like wildfire across the void. Where once the Dominion, pressed with certainty, now hesitation stained their movements. They had always been the hammer, and others the anvil. Yet here, in this system, the hammer cracked. The Terran battleship led the charge, its cannons roaring with relentless rhythm. Each strike sent shockwaves through Dominion formations. Its smaller escorts darted alongside, shields flashing, weapons blazing. The humans fought not as scattered prey but as a pack of wolves, disciplined, united, unyielding. For the rebels, the sight was life itself. They had been slaves, dragged through centuries of despair. Now, with the Terrans at their side, they remembered what it meant to fight. Broken ships surged forward, patchwork fleets ramming and firing with reckless courage. They no longer cared about survival. They cared about victory. Admiral Serac felt the shift like ice in his chest. His commands grew harsher, his tone more desperate. Hold your lines. Break their spirit. Do not let them believe they can win. But belief had already taken root. On a rebel vessel, Captain Lyra, a thin, scarred woman from a species long enslaved, stood trembling on her bridge. Her crew looked to her with wide, fearful eyes. Before today, she had led only retreats. Before today, she had ordered silence and obedience. Now, as Terran warships cut through Dominion lines, her voice rang out strong. Forward, no more chains. We fight with them. Her ship, barely functional, charged into the fray. Her weapons blazed, her engines screamed, and for the first time her people felt pride. Other rebel captains followed, each ship adding fuel to the fire. On the Terran Battleship, Captain Elena Markov saw it all. Her heart swelled with grim satisfaction. Humanity had not come only to protect itself. They had come to show others that the Dominion could bleed, and in bleeding, it could fall. The Dominion tried to adapt. They shifted formations, concentrating fire on the Terran flagship. Waves of cruisers swarmed, dreadnoughts surrounded, and strikecraft poured in like locusts. The humans stood firm, their shields flaring, their armor groaning under the weight of endless attacks. But then the Terrans revealed another card. Carriers at the rear opened their bays, and wings of Terran strikecraft soared into the void. Sleek, fast, deadly, they darted through enemy lines with ruthless precision. Where Dominion fighters swarmed like insects, Terran pilots hunted like hawks. Their weapons cut swaths through enemy squadrons, their movements sharp and fearless. The rebels cheered, inspired beyond reason. To them, these pilots were not just soldiers, they were symbols, proof that courage could outmatch cruelty. The Dominion. Fleets faltered. For every Terran ship damaged, 3 Dominion ships burned. For every rebel that fell, 10 more rose, shouting freedom with each shot. The unthinkable was happening. The Dominion was losing. In the heart of the Dominion command ship, Admiral Serac slammed his claws against the console. His pride raged, but fear gnawed at him. Never in all his centuries of rule had the Dominion faced an enemy like this. Not just strong, but unafraid. Not just skilled, but unbreakable. He bared his teeth and hissed, "If they rise, the galaxy will follow. This cannot be allowed." But the galaxy was already watching. Hidden broadcasts slipped through Dominion jammers. Across enslaved worlds, billions saw the battle. They saw Terran warships standing against the armada that had crushed countless civilizations. They saw rebels, once broken, rising again with fire in their hearts. Hope spread like dawn, impossible to contain. On one distant world, a child whispered to her mother, "The chains will break." On another, a slave worker lifted his eyes from the ground for the first time in years. The Dominion's shadow was fading. Back in the battle, the Terran Battleship shuddered under another barrage. Fires raged in its hull, but it refused to fall. On its bridge, Captain Markov gritted her teeth, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. She looked at the stars filled with fire, then at her crew, steady and unafraid. "Humanity does not bow," she said softly, "and neither will they." Around her, the Dominion fleets wavered. The galaxy trembled. The chains of ages had begun to break. The battle had turned into something the Dominion had never known before: uncertainty. For thousands of years, their victories had been inevitable, their enemies predictable. But now, as Terran warships cut through their fleets, a strange and dangerous feeling spread among the Dominion soldiers. That feeling was fear. Admiral Serac saw it in their formations. Ships hesitated before charging. Squadrons broke apart more easily than they should have. Captains, once ruthless and unquestioning, delayed their orders. Even his own voice, filled with anger and command, no longer carried the same weight. The humans had done more than fight. They had shattered the illusion of Dominion invincibility. From the bridge of the Terran Battleship, Captain Elena Markov studied the chaos. Smoke curled from broken panels, sparks hissed across the floor, but her crew stood steady. She could feel the pulse of the battle in her chest, every strike, every maneuver, every sacrifice. Humanity was proving itself. "Target their dreadnoughts," she ordered. "Cut the head from the beast." Her words were carried across the fleet and Terran ships obeyed. Waves of missiles and kinetic slugs hammered the Dominion's largest vessels. Dreadnoughts, symbols of unbreakable power, erupted in flames one by one. Each explosion was more than a victory. Each one was a message. The Dominion could bleed, and in bleeding they could fall. On the rebel ships the effect was overwhelming. Crews that had once fought with despair now fought with fire. They shouted, they cried, they poured every ounce of strength into the battle. They were not slaves anymore. They were warriors standing beside humanity. Admiral Serac's rage burned. He struck his command chair, claws carving deep scars into the metal. "This cannot be allowed," he roared. "If hope spreads, the Dominion will crumble." But hope had already taken root. Across distant worlds, the battle was being seen. Slaves huddled in secret tunnels, passing whispers of Terran victories. Prisoners in labor camps lifted their heads, daring to dream. Even soldiers forced to serve the Dominion began to question their masters. The Dominion was not eternal. It was only powerful until someone stronger arrived. And now, the humans had arrived. On the Terran Battleship, alarms screamed as a Dominion strike force concentrated fire. Shields flared. Bulkheads trembled. Crew members were thrown from their stations. Still, no one spoke of retreat. Markov wiped blood from her brow and steadied her voice. "Hold fast. Every minute we stand, another chain breaks." Her crew answered, with one voice, "Aye, Captain." Outside, the Dominion tried to swarm the battleship, but rebel vessels rushed in, throwing themselves between enemy fire and the Terran flagship. They knew they might not survive, but they had found something greater than survival: freedom. One rebel commander, Captain Lyra, slammed her ship into a Dominion cruiser, her final words echoing over comms. "For my people, for freedom." The explosion tore a hole in Dominion lines, and Terran fighters surged through. Sacrifice became fuel. Every fallen rebel, every scarred Terran vessel only hardened the will of those who remained. The Dominion had ruled with fear, but fear no longer worked. Now the galaxy was fueled by defiance. Serac's hands trembled. He had fought 1,000 battles, but never against an enemy who grew stronger the more they bled. Never against warriors, who looked at death and smiled. "These humans," he whispered, his voice shaking, "they are dangerous." But it was more than danger. It was destiny. For the first time in memory, the Dominion was no longer the only power in the galaxy. Humanity had risen, and with them, the enslaved had risen too. The chains of the Dominion were breaking, one battle at a time. And Serac, in the silence of his fear, realized the truth. If humanity was not destroyed here, then the Dominion itself would fall. Admiral Serac had never known doubt. His entire life had been victory after victory, his fleets unstoppable, his empire eternal. Yet as he stared at the burning wrecks of Dominion dreadnoughts and the relentless advance of the Terran fleet, doubt gnawed at him like a parasite. The humans were supposed to be nothing, a primitive race, untested, unknown. And yet, they fought as though the stars themselves had given them purpose. Their weapons tore through his armada, their resolve shattered the discipline of his soldiers, and their courage infected the rebels like wildfire. Serac's claws dug into the command table. "We cannot let them win. If they survive this day, the Dominion will not survive the next century." Desperation filled his mind. He gave an order he had never spoken in all his years of command. Unleash the Purge Protocol. At once, his ships began to move differently. Massive carriers opened sealed bays, releasing weapons forbidden even by the Dominion's own laws. Planet killers, star burners, devices that could turn entire worlds into ash. If he could not crush the Terrans with strength, he would burn everything around them. The rebels gasped in horror as sensors detected the weapons. Even the Terrans paused for a moment. Humanity had seen war, had known cruelty, but this was destruction, on a scale beyond madness. On the battleship bridge, Captain Elena Markov stood silent, her jaw tight. The enemy had revealed its true face. The Dominion did not rule with power, it ruled with fear of annihilation. But fear would not break humanity. "Target those carriers," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. "Destroy those weapons before they fire." The Terran fleet surged forward, engines blazing. Cruisers cut through enemy lines, frigates darted between dreadnoughts, and fighters swarmed the carriers like angry hornets. The void filled with fire. Every shot, a race against time. The Dominion fought back with fury. Swarms of interceptors blocked Terran fighters. Dreadnoughts hurled walls of plasma, and the carriers prepared their deadly launch. The space around them became a storm of death. Rebel ships threw themselves into the chaos, desperate to help. A damaged freighter rammed into a Dominion interceptor swarm, clearing a path for Terran fighters. A rebel destroyer ignited its reactor, sacrificing itself to cripple a Dominion carrier's shields. Every act of defiance bought precious seconds. On the Terran Battleship, alarms screamed. Entire decks were burning, casualties mounting. Yet no one wavered. Humanity's spirit held fast. Markov's voice rose above the chaos. "Forward. If we fall, they will burn the galaxy. We cannot fall." Her crew answered as one, voices steady, unbroken. The flagship's cannons roared again, slamming into a Dominion carrier. Its hull split apart, fire erupting as the forbidden weapons inside detonated prematurely. A shockwave ripped through the void, scattering Dominion ships. The rebels cheered, their courage redoubled. One weapon was destroyed, and more would follow. The tide once again shifted, but Serac was not finished. His command ship turned, engines burning, and he directed all remaining fleets at the Terran Battleship. Thousands of weapons locked onto the human flagship. Serac's voice thundered across comms, bitter and cruel. "Die, humans. Die and let your ashes remind the galaxy that no one escapes the Dominion." The storm came. Missiles, plasma beams, and lances of energy rained upon the battleship. Its shields cracked, its armor buckled, decks shook with every impact. Still it moved forward. Still it fought. Markov stood firm, refusing to yield. Her ship was bleeding, but her spirit was unbroken. "Let them come," she whispered. "We are humanity. We do not bow." And as the Dominion poured everything into one final attempt to crush them, the humans held the line. The galaxy watched, and the truth became undeniable. The Dominion could not break them. Humanity was the fire that would not die, and in that fire the Dominion's fate was sealed. The Dominion's final strike shook the stars. Thousands of weapons hammered the Terran Battleship, tearing through steel, ripping apart decks, and burning holes in its armor. Explosions shook the great vessel, alarms screamed, and entire compartments vented into space, but still it did not fall. Captain Elena Markov stood on the bridge, her uniform torn, blood streaking her face. Around her, officers worked with grim determination. The ship was dying, but their spirit was not. "They throw everything at us," Markov said softly. Her eyes shone with fire. "Because they are afraid." Outside, the Dominion command ship pressed forward, leading the final charge. Admiral Serac stood tall on his bridge, rage burning in his chest. He had sacrificed thousands, unleashed forbidden weapons, and still the humans endured. If he could not kill them here, then the Dominion itself would crumble. "Finish them," he roared. "End this now!" But the galaxy had changed. Rebel fleets, once scattered and weak, now fought with a fury Serac could not control. They no longer feared death. They no longer feared him. Ships rammed Dominion cruisers, fighters threw themselves into enemy formations, and captains shouted words that had been forbidden for centuries. Freedom. The Terran fleet, scarred and battered, surged forward alongside them. Humanity did not fight alone. They fought as the spark that had lit a fire across the stars. On the battleship's bridge, Markov gave the order that would echo through history. Target the Dominion flagship. End this. The great vessel's surviving cannons swiveled, glowing with power. Rebel ships cleared a path, sacrificing themselves to shield the Terran guns. The Dominion command ship loomed ahead, monstrous and proud, its weapons blazing. Serac stood on his bridge, watching the Terran battleship bear down on him. For the first time in his long, cruel life, he felt true fear. The humans did not bow. They did not break. They did not know how to surrender. And then the Terran cannons fired. Storm of kinetic fire ripped through the void, smashing into the Dominion flagship. Its shields collapsed in an instant, its armor shredded like paper. Explosions erupted along its hull as fire consumed it from within. Serac's roar of rage turned into silence as his command ship tore apart. The heart of the Dominion fleet was gone. The battlefield froze. Dominion captains, once certain of victory, now hesitated. Their admiral was dead, their flagship destroyed, and their illusion of eternity shattered. One by one, their formations broke. Some fled, others surrendered, and many were hunted down by rebels who had once trembled at their presence. The Terran battleship drifted in the aftermath, scarred but unbroken. Its armor was torn, its decks burned, but it still stood. To the rebels, it was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol, a promise. Cheers erupted across the rebel fleets. Crews wept openly, embracing one another. They had not only survived, they had won. And in winning, they had proven the Dominion was not eternal. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. On slave worlds, chains were broken. On prison colonies, guards were overthrown. On every world where despair had reigned, the cry of freedom rose. Humanity had come, and with them, hope had returned to the stars. On the bridge of the Terran battleship, Captain Markov stood tall, though exhaustion weighed on her shoulders. She looked at the ruined battlefield, then at the faces of her crew. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The Dominion will not fall in a day, but it will fall, and we will make sure of it." Her words carried the weight of truth. Humanity had proven itself unstoppable, not because of strength alone, but because of spirit. They fought not only for themselves, but for all who longed for freedom. The galaxy would never forget the day the Terran battleship appeared. It was the day chains broke, the day fear ended, the day a new dawn began, and from that dawn, humanity rose. Not as conquerors, but as liberators. The Dominion was not eternal, but humanity's will was.